Welcome to Thriving in the Game, a podcast dedicated to exploring what Black women need to navigate the corporate world of technology, offering insights, strategies, and personal stories that will affirm, validate, and encourage you on your journey up the corporate ladder. I'm your host, Alicia. Join me as we learn how to thrive together. We're back with our next profile in thriving. What happens when you look up the corporate ladder and realize you don't see your future self or your values reflected? What happens when you realize you need a role that offers more beyond the subject matter expertise, one that offers innovation, dynamic energy, and the ability to impact the digital landscape with immediacy? It means it may be time for a change. But what does it look like to transition your career into corporate tech? Our second profile in thriving highlights the career journey of Simone Thomas, a Brooklyn-based entrepreneur and technology professional working at the intersection of e-commerce and AI to serve marketers in our rapidly changing world. When she's not developing solutions and supporting commerce advertisers around the globe as a product marketing manager at Meta, Simone is highlighting her entrepreneurial journey through her blog and podcast, The Meaningful Shift. Simone is an amazing example of navigating a confident career transition into tech. She reminds us that the gap between where you are and where you want to be is just strategy. She recommends finding your focus in tech by assessing your current experience against potential technology roles. While you develop your technical skills, attract prospective opportunities by demonstrating your knowledge of the customer through blogging. And push past fear to make tactical connections and to build your technology industry network. Join us in this conversation as we learn more about Simone's career and what it looks like to thrive as a transitioning career Black woman in tech.
There's an interview that I hear a lot of people reference from Steve Jobs where he talks about the dots only connect when you look backwards. And that really resonates with me because I've just been meandering through life, I feel like. It looks really good on paper, but I think I've been making a lot of choices based on what feels right to me and what doesn't feel right. So I'll talk about all the different steps that I took when I kind of had these realizations. But I started my career working in ad agencies. I think for me in college, it seemed really fun. It wasn't a very scientific exercise in choosing my career, but really thinking about like psychology and how the brain works and like messaging and how do we sell things. Like I was just really interested in that. And so I spent a lot of time studying commercials and was like, maybe I want to do that work. So when I first graduated from college, the internet as a medium was becoming a bigger deal in the media space for advertisers. And so there were these roles in digital marketing and digital media. I worked with a bunch of people who had careers in advertising and they just didn't understand the digital landscape. So as a new college grad, it was like, of course, we're going to put her in this role. And it ended up being really good for me because it was growing super quickly. Becoming a subject matter expert amongst the team helped me build a lot of credibility, a lot of skills. But as I looked up, I think this is maybe like 3-4 years in, I was like, I don't want to be any of these people. If I look at my boss's boss, the CEO of the company, I just was like, something about this doesn't feel right. And I'm like, I just come here, show up, do the same job every day, repeat forever. So I don't know. I liked the media world, but I felt like it was really limited. And what I realized is actually really liked my clients. So when I would work with marketing managers at these different brands, and because I'm from Detroit, I worked on mostly car brands. So Ford, I really loved the work that they did because they had this more well-rounded approach to building a brand. They were in the market. They were talking about activations. And I realized after studying all of their careers, a lot of them had MBAs. So that was like my next step. Like, okay, I need to go to business school. My personal interest was in fashion. I was a girl that like watched Project Runway from the first season to the last season. And there wasn't a lot of opportunity for that in Detroit, but it was just like a passion point for me. So my whole journey of going to Wharton and being in Philly was trying to get closer to New York so that I could go be a marketer at a fashion company and become a CMO. Like that was my whole vision and dream. Fast forward after business school, I ended up at Nordstrom in Seattle, which was a surprise to me, but it was a really good experience. I interned there and then I spent 3 years working there in a little bit of an innovation role, trying to think about how do we move the Nordstrom shopping experience from just being so store focused to being focused on what a customer shopping online looks like. I was enjoying it, but again, I started looking up and I'm like, I don't know that I want to be these people. There were people that had been there 30 years, 35 years. I remember I was on year 3 and people were like, you're still new here. I'm like, wait a minute, I'm not new. So it felt like I wanted to move faster than the company would allow. And there were people that I admired, but I was like, I'm not going to stay here 30 years to get this job. Then it was 2020 when I'm like having all of these revelations and thinking about what I want, and retail just completely was upended. So one of the things that I realized was, we talk about digital media, we talk about e-commerce, is technology actually influencing change in all of these industries was like my connective thread. And so I started looking at like, how do I continue to work on fashion or e-commerce or like all of these things that are really interesting to me around consumer behavior and shopping and just the way that that whole landscape is changing, but in a way that is faster paced, where I don't have to like earn my seat at the table. I actually can contribute right away. Tech is the first place that kind of came to mind. So I spent a lot of time talking to friends of mine, former classmates, to try and understand what are the jobs that are available to me, because I knew that I wanted to make this transition, but I didn't really know where my skills fit. I felt like there was no job for me. I'm like, I'm not going to be a product manager. I'm obviously not going to be an engineer, but I didn't want to move into like a completely non-tech focused role. Talking to a lot of friends, I found this product marketing manager job, which I had never heard of. And a lot of places don't have it. But a friend of mine that was at, I think it was Intuit, was talking to me about her day to day. And I was like, I like how this sounds. It's kind of like a product manager, but it's a little bit more business, and the pace, all of those things that I was looking for in terms of being able to work on more innovative, faster moving teams. It felt like I could find the right company and find this role. So that was how I zeroed in on what I wanted to do. So back to retail being upended, I did end up getting furloughed from my job at Nordstrom. So I did some time at a startup pro bono. I was completely freaked out about, oh my God, I have this MBA and now I don't have a job and what am I going to do? So that was very helpful for me to just like focus my time. But that experience ended up, I think, giving me the like final tick of the box to be able to apply for a job in big tech. I've been at Meta for almost 4 years. And the way that I talk about my job, it's like a combination of all of the things that I've done in this role. And then I've learned the tech skills along the way, because really what I'm meant to do is be a strong advocate for our customers, which are advertisers, which are the Nordstroms of the world, which are the Dior's of the world, Amazon, thinking about big marketplaces, fashion companies, retailers that are trying to be more online, direct-to-consumer companies that were born online. Like, how do you help engineers really build solutions for those customers? And I, coming from an advertising background, coming from a retailer, can say these are the things that these people are thinking about every day. And so I realized I have a lot of value.
I love that, because if we go back to early in your journey, one of the things that I was really curious about is when you have someone who, when we say early career, it's the first 3 to 5 years of your career. And you've gotten into corporate, you're starting to learn the lay of the land. You're probably starting to encounter some different challenges, or even if not challenges, just a difference in terms of your expectations for what you want to do. And like you said, you're looking forward and you're like, I don't know that I really want to be these people. I think it's important for young women to know, even as you start thinking about these transitions, what skills do you have, right? And how do they start to translate? You were developing your skills as an SME. I hear you pursuing your master's level education, and then also talking to people in the industry. What are some other things that you feel like can help do that or helped you in your journey?
I think that talking to people is a huge unlock. I think anyone who's gotten anywhere has relied on their network. And I think your network doesn't just have to be, oh, I went to grad school and these are my classmates. One of the benefits, I think, of being a Black woman is we are mostly all willing to help each other. There's this sense of community that if someone just reaches out to me on LinkedIn, 90% of the time, if I can make it work, and if it's a Black person, I'm always like, let me help, because I know that we don't historically have all the same networks. Asking even strangers for help has been something that I have had to get comfortable with over many years. I relied on my classmates, and then also I would look at people's careers on LinkedIn. So if you look up in your company and you don't see people that you want to be, go find those people and then send them a message and ask if they'll give you 30 minutes of their time. Sometimes people will say no, but most of the time people will be really flattered and say yes. There were a lot of people that I did not know that I talked to, and just understanding their day to day and like the language around technology, the pace around technology. There are just some things that you're not going to read in a job rec. And so you're only going to really understand by talking to people. And I think those are the conversations that helped me realize I had more skills than I thought. And so it helped me when I went and redid my resume multiple times to pull out some of these other projects or things that I didn't think were relevant. So that is one thing. The other, I think, is just maintaining a sense of curiosity. So I know like looking for a job is very stressful, but one of the things that helped me get a lot of interviews when I was transitioning into tech is I started writing a newsletter. And it was really just thinking about the changes in the e-commerce landscape. Like, what are retailers thinking about? Why is this such a big deal? And that was important to me because I remember when I was leaving Wharton, I would go to events and talk to alumni, and they were like, oh, where are you going after school? What are you doing? And I kept saying, I'm going into retail. And people were looking at me like, why would you do that? And I'm like, where'd you get this shirt that you have on? It's a part of our lives. And yes, it's changing. And that's why I'm really interested in it. But for a lot of people, it's like, oh, this is a dying industry. But I think that perspective has helped me in tech because a lot of people I work with, product managers, product designers, engineers, they have been in tech their entire careers and they actually don't understand the industry. And so I did get some interviews and I remember talking to the hiring managers and they're like, oh, you have this really interesting perspective about how this industry is evolving. And being able to read a couple of my posts helped them get into my brain. And I think that also helped. Like my resume maybe doesn't say that you have a tech background, but this person understands our customer. They understand the problems. They're thinking deeply. And that was another way for me to build credibility. Thinking about how you can have a little bit of fun and something that feels really authentic to you. What are the things that you're curious about? And bringing those to the forefront, I think is also helpful in making this transition.
In talking about your master's degree, we're looking at the rising cost of education. Did you feel like it was imperative or kind of a prerequisite to this shift? Or do you feel like now that you're looking back and connecting the dots, was it something that you needed to do?
Yeah, that sparked two thoughts for me. One, looking backwards and connecting the dots, that is also one of the reasons that I transitioned to tech, because while I loved fashion was not going to help me pay back my MBA. And I realized after a couple years, I was like, okay, this math is not mathing. And I need to think about like longer term, how am I going to pay back this very expensive degree? And there's just reality of, I wanted to do something that was faster paced and more interesting. The other thing is looking back, I do think that the degree was necessary for me to get here, but maybe not for the reasons that some people will think. The network is one of the things I bought into. There's a lot of options for where you can go get a graduate degree. I was in a program called MLT, which is Management Leadership for Tomorrow. It's a nonprofit that is basically meant to move more Black and brown people, more underrepresented folks through the management pipeline. They have multiple programs. They have an early career, like getting into your first job out of undergrad. And then they have an MBA program. They have cohorts of people across the country that they're helping with applications or helping you with your presentation, your story, your strategy to apply to school. And then there's one that's for career development. MLT was the first time that I feel like I was exposed to this world. I'm from Detroit. My parents are like first generation to go to college. And so I had a little bit of a leg up, but there was a lot of stuff that they didn't know. They were not like involved in my application process. It's like, just go. So I think MLT helped me realize that, oh, there's all these people with this strategy about like how they're going to go to this school and then have this career. And then it's going to open up these doors and they're going to have this network. MLT actually helped me realize, one, I should aim high. Wharton was not even in my vocabulary, but also getting into the best school that you can get into actually pays more dividends. And so Wharton was really helpful for me from a networking standpoint. So the advice I give when I talk to people now, you can get a master's degree, but it's so competitive right now. Go to the best school you can get into. And then you have to strategically figure out how to pay it back. I am not going to lie. It is expensive. I still have a lot of debt, but I have a very clear path to pay it back. And I feel like that math works because this degree has opened doors for me through the alumni network. The other thing that was actually really helpful is realizing that I belong at Wharton.
Yes, ma'am.
I was really intimidated when I first got there. And then by the time I left, the confidence that I had in what I was able to do has also helped me make many transitions in my life, because I realized there's just a gap between what I know and what I want to know. And I have more control over filling that gap than I realized. So I think for my own just confidence and growth, that experience was really, really powerful for me.
I think that's a very powerful statement. We talk a lot about strategy throughout this season in terms of your career, right? I still feel like business is a much newer industry for Black culture, American Black culture, at least. I grew up in a family of educators. The only other person who was in business was an uncle that I had, and he made his way in sales. And because he started in the military coming out, he had a lot of connections. So I think there's a lot about strategy that we don't fully understand. I think there's this process that you go through as an early career Black woman where you start to look up, again, not necessarily see the type of leader or a reflection, not just physically, but a reflection of who you want to be at the top. And like you said, I think it's understanding that in order to close the gap of where you are, where you want to be, it's just strategy and being focused and intentional on how you get there. I also appreciate that you talk about confidence. I think many of us go into these experiences, especially when you go into Ivy League, it seems so far away, right? It's not like, oh, I'm an urban folk tale. You can be middle-class Black people and still there's a gap between us and Ivy League, which is intentional, right? Hearing you talk about the confidence and recognizing when you got there and seeing how you developed. And like you said, you belong there. You belong there the entire time. It was really just you kind of catching up to that thought process.
I think we show up in these places and then I don't like to use imposter syndrome. That doesn't like really resonate with me, but there is this feeling of discomfort when you're in a new place that is out of the realm of possibility for you, for your family. Like I'm the first in my family to be in a lot of these types of spaces. And so I don't have any reference points, but it's something that I continue to overcome. I love what you said about that strategy, realizing that a lot of people have a strategy and we as a community have just not been able to build that. But it doesn't mean that we can't get there. We don't belong in these spaces. And so that's why I say reach out to people that are not in your network, because as people like me learn the strategy, we want to share. We want to pass that down and spread the wealth of knowledge so that more of us can end up in these spaces.
What do you feel like outside of obtaining your master's degree from Wharton, building a network, building your confidence, learning to sit in discomfort and reach out to people? What are some other tools or strategies in getting to where you are now?
I think the only other thing that comes to mind, because again, I feel like, I don't know how strategic my approach was. It's like every 2 years, I'm like, okay, what's the plan for the next 2 years?
But even that is a strategy, because early in the season, we talk about not only establishing your values, but recognizing they will change over time. Life changes, your life responsibilities change, marriage, babies, taking care of parents, sickness, illness, your values will change over time. And we talk a lot about assessing yourself. And I suggested every 6 months. My guest at the time said that's team too much. But I think figuring out for you, maybe that assessment period has been every couple of years, which again, to me is a strategy.
I think that's more of what my approach has been in thinking about my little 2-year increments. And I like what you said about values, right? There are things that I know that I want in my life. I would like to have a family. So that is something that I am thinking about in where I work and where I live and what types of jobs I have. Do I see women who have young children, who have multiple children, who are working and able to sustain and grow in their careers in this company? Okay, check. Like, what kind of roles are they in? What do the leaders look like? Does it feel like that life is in conflict with the organization, or like that thing is supported? So I think strategically, that is part of what I use as like my framework to decide if I'm happy where I am and if I'm on the right track. And then thinking about where are the places that I want to grow. That's important for me to feel like I can continue to be here and have the things that I want in my life outside of just my career. I knew when I was coming to Meta, for example, like growth was really important to me because yes, I belong in the room, but you got to earn the credibility of being a tech professional. You have to earn the trust of your team. And so I did need to learn, and I wanted to be in a company where they were focused on that. So being at that startup for a little bit, it was not about learning. It was like, we need to move fast. You don't actually have a boss. You just need to go. So that type of environment was not what I was looking for. I think strategically thinking about every couple of years, like, what are you trying to get out of this? And then if you have a long-term goal, you want to be a chief product officer, you want to be a CEO, you want to be an entrepreneur, are these helping you get to that North Star along the way? Some of the things that also helped me is listening to other stories of people who have built companies or businesses that I admire. So I spent a lot of time listening to podcasts of people who built tech companies. Stitch Fix was a company, for example, that I was really excited about at the intersection of tech and fashion. Spending a lot of time on her story and thinking about what does my leadership style look like in comparison to hers, and how do I incorporate some of what she does into my strategy.
Hearing you, the thoughts that spark for me are, one, I love that you said building trust. And even as you look at the stories of others, figuring out how you develop your own way. As a people leader, that was one of the things that I tried to impress upon direct reports. I want you to learn from me. I want you to go talk to other leaders, and I want you to learn from them. You can sit in on my meetings, sit in on their meetings. The purpose is to learn different styles, but then I need you to go back and reflect on how are you doing this for yourself? Not necessarily for our conversations, but ultimately you navigating this career. Who do you want to be? How do you want to do it?
I think it's a really powerful reminder that you have to come up with a version of your life, your career that is authentic to you, because when we look up, we will not see ourselves in so many places. So it has to be a unique point of view. It hasn't existed in a lot of these companies, or there have been people that have had to fit into this mold, and maybe you see them operating in a way that doesn't feel authentic to themselves. So like finding a way to really bring yourself up to a point, but a way that feels really sustainable and authentic and joyful, and focusing on the parts of the work that you really love and enjoy so that it's something that you can continue to do for the long term.
I like how you spoke to innovation, because I connected to your point, finding a version of yourself in your career. I do think sometimes we are innovators. Like you said, there's not a lot of reflection. That's one of the inspirations behind this podcast. I want more Black women in tech, but I want more Black women rising higher in tech. And we don't have a script or path in necessarily getting there. It doesn't always look in a way that's appealing, right? Like, I want to be Alicia. I don't want to be this carbon copy mold of this person who carbon copied this white man.
Well, that's the thing. It's like we're modeling people who've modeled after white men for generations, and we're all saying like, maybe a lot of that isn't working. Well, why would I be trying to replicate that if that's not working? So yes, it has to look attractive to you and feel like I can bring myself to this. And I think that there's a lot of tension right now.
It is. I don't believe that the journey is easy, but I do think even in reflecting on building your skills, I appreciate that you had the confidence to make this transition, and you've had the confidence to really look at what you bring and recognize the value, and then be strategic in finding a role that speaks to it. But I also appreciate that you talked about how you've had to develop your learning. And so in addition to maybe studying other individuals or studying their careers or maybe the moves they've made, how else do you feel like you've been strategic about your growth?
I started in a rotational program at Nordstrom. So that was one of the benefits of coming out of business school. There's a lot of companies that have these like multidisciplinary programs because they want you to come in, ramp up, learn a bunch of different things. I feel like having exposure to a lot of different parts of the company helped me build a more well-rounded view of like how things work and like what are the levers for growth. And then it helps me build a network of different people. Like if it's a leader or director, I would take them on as like an informal mentor, try and set up time and additional connections and get them to introduce me to people. And that's how I would get pulled into projects and things. At Meta, it's a very bottoms up culture. Like individual contributors basically run everything. So we don't get a lot of top down direction. I feel like my biggest opportunity was to just really deeply understand our products and our solutions and then our customer problems. Because if I'm trying to influence my peers to do work, I want them to do the work that's most impactful, the work that matters. And I want them to trust that I am giving feedback on things that we need to build or fix that's actually going to be meaningful. And so I spent a lot of time trying to make a friend with an engineer, or again, like where I found those connections and people would vibe. Can I set up 30 minutes with you like every couple of weeks and just ask questions about about like how this works. And then I would find a salesperson that really wanted to feel more connected to the product team. And I would basically be their go-to person. If their client is coming in and they're like, oh, I need someone to come and do a presentation. And that relationship helped me with market feedback. So I think there's a theme of people. I think that that's been a big thing for me, is like, where can I find the people in the organization who know the thing, who feel open, like they want to make time and space? And then how can I make it reciprocal so that it feels like a good use of their time and a good use of my time, but just being a sponge and trying to find people that I could latch on to.
How are you focused on growing now? Because you said you've been with Meta almost 3 years. Have you been in the same role or has that changed?
So yeah, it'll be 4 years in June. I am thinking about growth beyond tech at this point. To your earlier comment about how do we authentically show up and continue to rise through the ranks, I'm feeling tension between those two things at the current moment. I have always wanted to be a people leader. I have one direct report right now, but I really love focusing on people's growth and development and thinking about the culture. If we have to work for most of our lives, like, can it be enjoyable? Can people feel like they're getting something out of it? And I am struggling with whether that is something that I can do the higher up I go in an organization. I feel like a lot of directors and VPs and like C-suite folks, this is me projecting, but my assumption for Black people who have made it to that point are really balancing taking care of us and then holding the line on company policies that they maybe don't agree with. I have seen some people just say, I'm out. Like, this is not what I signed up for. But I think it's a really challenging thing when you're one of 2 Black VPs in a company. You don't want to leave. It just doesn't feel like a comfortable place for me to think about. I'm starting to look up again and go, I don't know. And so entrepreneurship is my next venture. And I am starting to think about how do I take the skills that I have built and am continuing to build and create something for myself so that I can continue to have the things that I value. I still want to have a family. And so I'm not like leaving tomorrow. Please don't tell Mark. But when I start looking up, I'm like, okay, I think what I want is something that's going to be completely controlled by me. And the most authentic way that I can show up and lead is an organization where I have built the values and the mission and I can stick to that. So a lot of the things I've learned at Nordstrom, that I'm learning in this job, that I learned at a startup, like all of that is helping. The confidence helps. It's terrifying, but that's using the same framework I've been using throughout my career. It feels like the right next thing for me to optimize for.
Wow. It's interesting because I've also experienced that same tension. I can't imagine the pressure of being at the executive level because, like you said, I think you are having to toe the line with company policy and company culture while also trying to help bring others along with you. But you're only one person, right? Even when we talk about mentorship and sponsors early in the season, we talk about sometimes those mentors and sponsors won't look like you just because that's all who's available. And sometimes those who look like you are not necessarily trying to bring you where they are. With that in mind, what has kept you? And I guess in some ways, what's inspired you to remain?
The thing that is great about technology as an industry is it's still new. Like, I think it's a part of all of our lives. And so we've normalized it. Obviously, AI is the hot button topic, but we've probably only scratched the surface for what technology as an industry is going to mean for human life on this planet. And I think that building the plane while you fly it kind of thing is a good skill. So it's motivating for me when I think about my personal growth and development to be in this place with ambiguity and the pace and people that are really motivated to take ownership of problems and really think about being on the frontier of something. I think it's an inspiring environment to grow in. So while I don't see myself 10 years from now being the VP of the organization that I'm in, I think that I'm still getting a lot out of being in this environment. And it's so counter to what else I've experienced. Like I mentioned, a lot of my coworkers, they've been in tech their entire career. So they maybe take some of this for granted. But being in a place where you're told, well, that's the way we've always done things, that made me crazy when I heard it at other places. And that's not something that exists in tech. So I think that is really inspiring and motivating for me. And then when we talk about being a Black woman and being innovative, our people have literally been building worlds new futures, innovating. We've had to make our own way. And so I feel a connection to that I continue to hold on to. And I try to divorce the overall culture of the industry or like what's happening in any individual company from like my personal mission, my personal goals, and how I feel day to day. And I work with some amazing people. And so when I just like focus on that bubble and the fact that I have these goals for myself, I'm still on track for those things. And I try to just remind myself when things get real hairy and dark.
Yeah. So, and not looking too far ahead, let's say we're looking at the next 2 to 3 years. What do you feel like is a goal within this industry that you're comfortable sharing that you would like to achieve?
Yeah, I do think leading a small team is my goal before I move on completely. Right now, I'm in like side hustle territory, employee of one in my other journey. But I feel like there's a lot of opportunity here at Meta for me to mentor other people, especially early career, and share a lot of what I've learned and help them navigate and get the most out of this experience for themselves. I think my main goal is thinking about like, how do I bring this sense of humanness and the importance of human connection and the growth mindset and help other people build a thriving path for themselves in this company.
That's beautiful. As I listen to your story and look at your career, you've gone from what I would call a really demanding field with advertising. You've been in fashion. These are not easy journeys. And now in tech, which is also not an easy journey. But I think it's good to know careers are demanding, period. And now even, you know, as you venture into entrepreneurship, whether it's a side hustle or 10, 15 years down the line, it's a full-time path for you. How do you manage your career in a healthy and productive way? How do you take care of Simone?
Oh, yeah. I've learned this the hard way. I think my current job is the most demanding, mostly because it's global. And so it never turns off. This pace that tech moves in, it's like a race always. There's no slow periods, at least at this company. And so I've had to learn to build in my own moments of slowness, or you just get run over. Like I experienced pretty serious burnout in 2023 and ended up having to take like a medical leave from work because I have some general health issues that are exacerbated by stress. And so it just really spiraled. That time off was really important for me because like if Simone doesn't have to work, who is Simone? And so I had to spend a lot of time thinking about what's important to me. What do I do when no one else is buying for my time? Then I was so much clearer when I was focused on those things. And so I realized when I come back to work, I need to continue to make space for that. And it actually helps me be better at my job because I'm operating from this place of clarity and I'm rested. So boundaries of, even though the world is 24 hours and we're living in a global world, like what are your hours where you are going to do your work? How are you not going to be a yes man and say yes to everything and help everybody when you're not helping yourself? And then all of the things that we hear for your general health and well-being, exercise, getting outside, prioritizing your sleep, spending time with friends and family, like all of those things actually help me do my best work. And I think that it's helped me be successful. I've had to prioritize, but like for me, it's worked out so far.
That's important to know as you transition into tech. Again, part of this conversation is making moves with confidence, and building your confidence has been a process over time. And I think for someone transitioning in who's having to learn more of the tech language and things like that, I think there's a tendency for us to want to prove ourselves. I also think as Black women, we typically take on way more than we just need to. November 2022, I also had to take a medical leave for burnout. But after I came back, I went through a similar journey of creating those boundaries. So eventually in November of 2023, I took a sabbatical. And so I am now back in the working world, but the mindset shift has been something that I've noticed. I'm a person of faith. My first couple of weeks, I noticed myself like getting not angry, but like tense over the way people were doing things, and that same kind of like they don't want to change, or we're going to continue doing what we want to do. We're going to call it by a different name. And I promise I heard the Holy Spirit say, I didn't call you to that. And I was like, you know what? You're right. Y'all be blessed. Do what y'all gonna do. And so really that has become my mantra of I wasn't called to that. And I'm going to focus on what I was called to. I will do it well. I will do it with excellence. I will continue to build my confidence and know that I'm amazing at what I do and what I've been gifted to do. And for those things outside of that, I'm gonna let other people worry about those problems. So I don't have the space for it. And I refuse to allow myself to get back to that burnout place again.
And it's hard hard because they will push you. But I had to realize, like you said, like, I feel like I came back completely changed. And I was like, oh, you guys are all on the same wavelength. And if that works for you, that's fine. You keep doing that. But I'm not getting pulled back into that. I can't.
And I think it's because people haven't invested the time. And I know this is a whole different conversation, but I think people follow what they feel is the path. What I hear you saying is your journey has come to, I take the time to be strategic and intentional about figuring out my own path. And sometimes that will be at tension in your environments. And so again, you are empowered to make choices. You can adjust how you go forward. You can adjust your environment. Your values may even adjust and you may want something completely different. So yeah, I think that's a very empowering place to be. As we wrap up our time today, you've given us so much wisdom in terms of navigating your career, navigating that transition, building confidence. Are there any other parting words of advice or recommendations that you would make for early career Black women or seasoned Black women who are looking to transition into the technology industry?
Be persistent, but be flexible, because like I said at the beginning, everything looks like it makes sense on paper for me looking back 10 years, but I took a lot of meandering paths to get here. There were a lot of things that I wanted that didn't happen, places that I thought I wanted to be. I'm in New York finally now, but that was my original plan, right, when we started. But now I'm here with a job that's paying me well. I have a man that I had to corral from the other side of the country. I grew into this version of myself, and all of that happened in places that I didn't think I was going to be, that originally were not on my path. And so I've been open to going where opportunities are, where growth is, and just being a little bit flexible and saying like, okay, maybe I can't have everything that I want right now, but what can I get out of these different experiences? And then just being persistent about finding a place that feels really authentic to you, constantly asking that question, like, is this right? No, keep pushing, because you have more control than you think over your life. You just have to work for it and be relentless about making sure that at the end of the day, you have the story that you want to tell.
Wow. Simone, I knew this would be an amazing conversation, and there's such a beauty and wisdom to you that I know that the women listening will take so much from. Thank you for sharing your journey with me.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me. Anyone I can help, like I said, I asked a lot of strangers for advice, listened to a lot of people give me advice. So anyone I can help, I'm grateful. So thank you for giving me the opportunity.
I really hope you enjoyed this episode. Take some time to reflect on what you heard here. Be sure to follow us on IG and subscribe to our newsletter on Substack. Find us at Thriving in the Game on both. If you have a comment or recommendation, DM or email me. You can find my email in the show notes. I'd love to hear from you as we build community around thriving in the game. Until next time, take care.